Νιώθετε πως ήρθε η ώρα να ξεκινήσετε τη διαδρομή σας στις επενδύσεις. Αλλά αναζητάτε μια κατεύθυνση που να ταιριάζει στις ανάγκες και τις δυνατότητές σας με βάση τον δικό σας οικονομικό προγραμματισμό. Γιατί θέλετε να αξιοποιήσετε και να επενδύσετε τα χρήματα που μπορεί να περισσεύουν από τα έξοδά σας για να τα τοποθετήσετε σταδιακά σε μια επένδυση σε διαφορετικές στιγμές και αν το αποφασίσετε στην πορεία, να μπορείτε να αυξήσετε το κεφάλαιο που επενδύετε. Ο δρόμος για αυτό που ψάχνετε είναι τα αμοιβαία κεφάλαια. Σας δίνουν τη δυνατότητα να ξεκινήσετε την επένδυση με ένα ποσό και παράλληλα να επενδύετε σταδιακά όποτε εσείς το επιθυμείτε, επιτυγχάνοντας χρονική διασπορά στο χαρτοφυλάκιό σας. Έτσι, εξομαλύνονται οι επιπτώσεις από τις διακυμάνσεις των αγορών και εσείς περιορίζετε το άγχος σας για το αν επενδύετε στη σωστή στιγμή. Με το πρόγραμμα περιοδικής επένδυσης σε αμοιβαία κεφάλαια Master Plan, έχετε ευελιξία στο ποσό και τη συχνότητα των καταβολών σας και μπορείτε να χτίσετε ένα επενδυτικό χαρτοφυλάκιο χωρίς να χρειάζεται να επενδύσετε ολόκληρο το κεφάλαιό σας εφάπαξ. Ξεκινήστε σήμερα τη διαδρομή σας και ενημερωθείτε για τη χρονική διασπορά με τακτικές καταβολές αμοιβαία κεφάλαια σε ένα κατάστημα Eurobank ή στο eurobank.gr.
What does it mean to be a leader in the new digital era? It means to lead the way towards digital transformation, changing everything. Changing the way 125,000 businesses and professionals work. Investing in your people as they are your power. Evolving and joining your forces with new, innovative partners. Leading the way of business into the digital future. That is what being a leader means. Epsilon Net Group, the new digital era of businesses.
Μεγαλώνουμε σημαίνει ερχόμαστε πιο κοντά στα σχέδιά μας. Στην NN μεγαλώσαμε και δημιουργήσαμε τη μεγαλύτερη ασφαλιστική εταιρεία στην Ελλάδα. Έτσι, συνεχίζουμε με διευρυμένο δίκτυο, ευέλικτα ασφαλιστικά προγράμματα και ακόμη μεγαλύτερη ευθύνη να στηρίζουμε τα σχέδιά σας και όσα έχουν σημασία για εσάς. Γιατί η ζωή είναι πάντα μπροστά.
Νιώθετε πως ήρθε η ώρα να ξεκινήσετε τη διαδρομή σας στις επενδύσεις. Αλλά αναζητάτε μια κατεύθυνση που να ταιριάζει στις ανάγκες και τις δυνατότητές σας με βάση τον δικό σας οικονομικό προγραμματισμό. Γιατί θέλετε να αξιοποιήσετε και να επενδύσετε τα χρήματα που μπορεί να περισσεύουν από τα έξοδά σας για να τα τοποθετήσετε σταδιακά σε μια επένδυση σε διαφορετικές στιγμές και αν το αποφασίσετε στην πορεία, να μπορείτε να αυξήσετε το κεφάλαιο που επενδύετε. Ο δρόμος για αυτό που ψάχνετε είναι τα αμοιβαία κεφάλαια. Σας δίνουν τη δυνατότητα να ξεκινήσετε την επένδυση με ένα ποσό και παράλληλα να επενδύετε σταδιακά όποτε εσείς το επιθυμείτε, επιτυγχάνοντας χρονική διασπορά στο χαρτοφυλάκιό σας. Έτσι, εξομαλύνονται οι επιπτώσεις από τις διακυμάνσεις των αγορών και εσείς περιορίζετε το άγχος σας για το αν επενδύετε στη σωστή στιγμή. Με το πρόγραμμα περιοδικής επένδυσης σε αμοιβαία κεφάλαια Master Plan, έχετε ευελιξία στο ποσό και τη συχνότητα των καταβολών σας και μπορείτε να χτίσετε ένα επενδυτικό χαρτοφυλάκιο χωρίς να χρειάζεται να επενδύσετε ολόκληρο το κεφάλαιό σας εφάπαξ. Ξεκινήστε σήμερα τη διαδρομή σας και ενημερωθείτε για τη χρονική διασπορά με τακτικές καταβολές αμοιβαία κεφάλαια σε ένα κατάστημα Eurobank ή στο eurobank.gr.
What does it mean to be a leader in the new digital era? It means to lead the way towards digital transformation, changing everything. Changing the way 125,000 businesses and professionals work. Investing in your people as they are your power. Evolving and joining your forces with new, innovative partners. Leading the way of business into the digital future. That is what being a leader means. Epsilon Net Group, the new digital era of businesses.
Μεγαλώνουμε σημαίνει ερχόμαστε πιο κοντά στα σχέδιά μας. Στην NN μεγαλώσαμε και δημιουργήσαμε τη μεγαλύτερη ασφαλιστική εταιρεία στην Ελλάδα. Έτσι, συνεχίζουμε με διευρυμένο δίκτυο, ευέλικτα ασφαλιστικά προγράμματα και ακόμη μεγαλύτερη ευθύνη να στηρίζουμε τα σχέδιά σας και όσα έχουν σημασία για εσάς. Γιατί η ζωή είναι πάντα μπροστά.
Το πράγμα πρέπει να με τυφλώνει έτσι. Παντελώς. Με τυφλώνει παντελώς. Δεν ξέρω, οι άλλοι τυφλώνονται.
Όχι, δεν με τυφλώνει. Να σου πούμε ειλικρινής δηλαδή.
Εντάξει, πιστεύω. Μέρα σε όλους.
Good morning, everyone. Please be seated so that we can start. Of course, we know that today we have the general strike, so we were expecting the late coming of many of our participants. But many people are already watching us on the live on platform, so we would like to welcome them as well. So good morning, everyone here or online. This is the fourth Fund and Asset Management Conference that we organize. The board of our association has decided that we should have these fund conferences every year on an annual basis. And we are ready to start with today's conference. First of all, I would like to welcome Mrs. Lazarakou, who is the head of the Capital Market Greece, Mr. Papalexopoulos of the Association of Industrialists, and Mrs. Parakaki from the Banks Association. I hope that I haven't missed anyone. Also, Mr. Kontopoulos is here from the Athens Exchange Group. And I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Esopos right after I thank my sponsors, our sponsors. They are the members of the association and kind sponsors of this conference. I would like also to thank all the companies that took under their auspices this conference, the Association of Banks, the Athens Stock Exchange, the Hellenic Capital Market Commission, and the Hellenic Fund and Asset Management Association. Also the Association of Listed Companies, and also CFA Society Greece, the Department of Business and Administration of the Economics University of Athens, and all our supporters. So I give the floor right away to Mr. Chris Esopos, Chairman of the Hellenic Fund and Asset Management Association. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Hellenic Fund and Asset Management Association, I would like to welcome you here. Let's start then with the fourth Fund and Asset Management Conference, where we're going to focus on investing in times of inflation. This is something that is a very hot topic. We have 27 billion in our portfolio, all the members of the association, and more than 600 persons who work in these companies. We also have corporate work. One of the example of this corporate work is these kind of conferences that address the business community. We'll have the opportunity to discuss about all issues that are important for our work. We'll have the opportunity to share knowledge and experiences. We'll speak about funds, about mutual funds, about alternative investments, about private equities, and of course, the emerging sector, the emerging sectors of the last couple of years. So I would like to welcome you, and I would like to wish success in this conference. We are expecting the minister to come at 10:30. So before that, I would like to give the floor to the chair of the Hellenic Capital Market and member of ESMA, Mrs. Vasiliki Lazarakou, to take the floor right away. Thank you, Mrs. Vasilikou. Ladies and gentlemen, dear President of the Association of Investors, dear President of the Industrialists Association, dear president of the Athens Stock Exchange, acting president of the Association of Hellenic Banks. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for the invitation in this conference, and I would like to congratulate you for the topics of the conference today, because indeed what is very important today is to see how we can tackle investments in this inflation environment. So it's very important to have consultations and discussions in all the panels that you're holding today. I see that you have in your agenda very important and experienced speakers. So congratulations for your effort, and I'm sure that you'll have success in these types of endeavors in the future. As most of you know, the operation of funds and any kind of funds, mutual funds or IFs or alternative funding, and any type of issue related with the operation and the regulation in this area are at the focal point of international and European, of course, discussions, exactly because we see the capital market unions speeding up. So let me start with the Greek case, and then we'll see what is going on in Europe and internationally based on the experience we have in our associations. And then I will close my presentation with a glimpse to the future, the topics that will emerge after the changings we're going through. So starting with Greece, let me give you first some information about the current situation. On August 31st, 2023, we saw 186 Greek mutual funds of 11 billions. We had 8 billions only at the end, December of 2022, so we have 3 more billions in our portfolio today, inflows being the major part of this. This is a difference with the European landscape where we don't have so high inflows. So this input regards mainly bonds and bond mutual funds, which are very attractive to the investors. As Mr. Kondopoulos will surely mention when he takes the floor from the stock exchange, I want to stress that in the 8 first months of 2023, we have a 35% increase in our indicators showing exactly this acceleration. And if we see back to 2019, we see 86% increase. We don't see the same increase in alternative investments. There is still margin to augment the operations there. We're speaking about 3.5 billions there at the end of December 2022. After 2021, we've seen investors, both in private and public, towards the Greek mutual funds while before 2019, they preferred international funds. This means that confidence in Greek products is now higher. What is important is that we keep up with this trust and we honor this confidence. That's important for the supervisor and for the operators in the market, because we need to continue our effort to maintain this climate, especially in view of the high increase of the obligations and liabilities of the managers from now onwards. And as you know, since the moderators and managers are a significant point related to reporting and regulation, we have to bear them in mind as well. So what kind of changes do we expect internationally and European-wise? As I said before, we see accelerated progress in the union of capital markets. So we're speaking actually about a single market with unified databases. What does this mean, though? Unification of the funds market in terms of funding. It means, and it is an objective of this union, to strengthen competitiveness of the European market in vis-à-vis the Asian or American markets. To do so, we need to decrease cost and increase performance. In other words, already in Europe, we see a discussion related to the effort to rationalize cost and performance. I am speaking about this because it's a focal point in the European legislation. IFNB, for example, speaks about a single treatment of cost throughout Europe. Or in the next months to come, we'll see a cost reporting throughout Europe, plus evaluation of costs based on justification of deviations. The retail investment strategy, the so-called RIS, is also another important point for legislation that will address private investors. It is our purpose to keep competitiveness high in the Greek market. For this reason, we have to discuss among us and see how we can maintain this good climate in terms of competition. If necessary, of course, we're going to rationalize cost, always looking forwards and outwards towards Europe. As a supervising authority, we participate in joint activities and operations, which are very important so that we have convergence throughout European countries. So we focus on the matters that I just mentioned, plus the studies that we publish exactly on these types of matters, where we categorize funds and classify the investing products. Now, another issue is sustainability of funding and investments, the SSBI, and the obligations of the managers that need to be complied with. I'm mentioning this because at that point we have many developments which regard the basic practices and the reporting methods that the managing companies, the fund managers, should follow. This is very, very important for all the European organs, that all the companies comply with this FDI. It's very important that the fund managers report whether their products are sustainable or not in compliance with Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is that they do have purposes of objectives of sustainability, but they do not invest on them, while in Chapter 9 they do both, abide by and invest. So that's very important, and that's why ESMA in 2022 published a supervisory briefing that we disseminated to all the managers, which clarifies a set of issues, as, for example, the incorporation of risk management in the products and the reporting of funding in terms of sustainability. So this is important. And I want to stress that in the next months to come, we'll have a joint European supervisory operation focusing exactly on the approach of the companies, because we want to know how companies address sustainability issues, and then compliance. The third basic topic is liquidity risk. You know that this is a hot topic since 2017. But after March 2020, that we had the major outflows from the country, and then in March 2023, where after Credit Suisse, we had several issues in the market, we've seen the discussion becoming even hotter. And the European organs have proceeded to a series of studies for the development of liquidity management tools for investors. So due to the interest rates, due to the energy cost, the high inflation, geopolitical risks, etc., we see that liquidity risk is higher in all markets, which means higher risk in mutual funds, for the management of which these types of tools are necessary. And another issue regards the following day. One of the things that we need to do for the following day in collaboration with the Association of Funding Investors is to transpose to the Greek legislation the liquidity management tools that are mentioned in European legislation. It's important to have this kind of tools in order to handle the Greek landscape. And already, with the cooperation of the institutional funding associations, we have started this type of lobbying, and soon we'll set this issue in consultation so that it can be transposed into the Greek legislation. And of course, we have to remain vigilant because we'll see a lot of changes, many modifications in the legislation and the environment. So we need to be well prepared because these changes usually are more obvious at the smaller markets like the Greek market. We saw what happened when we changed the PRIPS methodology. We also expect the NFFB changes and the REEF changes, the INFND, the SFDI issues, etc. Of course, you'll need to know that the capital market is going to be supporting all these efforts, both as regards the regulatory framework, and I remind you the seminars that we've been holding for the last couple of years, and we'll have another one if necessary, and in the matters of preventive surveillance. As a supporter, we need to make things more comprehensible as regards legal issues and also see what kind of changes in legislation are necessary, as, for example, the liquidity tools that I just mentioned, so as to facilitate the work of operators. Let me finish with a short example. We'll support new products as well, and this way we'll lobby for new changes in legislation. The IFs, for example, have changed so that they become more flexible, and this was after an order by the European Union. So we'll continue our efforts throughout the rainbow of the issues that I just mentioned for a better future in the Greek capital market. Thank you, Mrs. Lazarakou, for your very significant contribution and your promise that you'll be our supporter for the changes that we're going to propose. Let me ask now Mr. Kondopoulos from the Athens Exchange Group to take the floor.
Ωραία, ευτυχώς θα πρέπει να βιαστώ μάλλον να βγάλω τη φωτογραφία. Καλημέρα σας.
Good morning everyone. Let me see if that works. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to address you all in this conference for the second time since I got in office. In the last 12 years, a lot of major events occurred at global and local level. We took some initiatives in the Athens Stock Exchange in order to adjust to this new market. We created a new image for the stock exchange. The upgrade of Greece in investment degree creates more perspectives for the stock exchange. Let's see more specifically the perspectives. In 2022, Greek economy grew And there are two things to bear in mind. We are at a period where Greece performs twice as much compared to the rest of Europe. Twice as much as 2022 and more for 2023. Last estimates for 2024 are quite optimistic. These are the major data that influence capital markets and the stock exchange. Does that have any cost on inflation? The answer is no. If we see the course of inflation in Greece is lagging behind compared to Europe, and if we see 23-24 accumulatively, we are at lower level. But there is not a trade-off, as we can see in the last decades, that the extra growth paid off with extra inflation. So we have tourism that in 2023 is expected to exceed the previous high of 2019. And we have a lot of investments. I repeat that because it's important for the way we think as global economy is going to evolve in the rest of the year and in 2024. Because these kinds of fiscal conditions with the European support makes us feel secure. Something we did not feel in the past. Greece has a best performance among 34 countries. We had 5 financial indices taken into consideration: GDP, inflation, the course of stock exchange, and public debt. We are well aware of these for 2023. Given the data, we will be in the first line in 2024 as well, and there are official estimates that debt will drop more. According to a study of Ernst & Young of 2022, is an attractive destination for foreign investments in Europe, and the data in a sample of 253 businesses participating in the survey, we saw that the image of the country has improved, and usually it comes from businesses with no presence in Greece until now, and from those already installed in Greece. From all those companies, most of them answered that they opt for Greece to invest. And we have others that think that the position of Greece has not deteriorated. 3 out of 4 interviewees said that in the next years, Greece will be more attractive. EY will publish a report in 2 weeks. The data will be similar as expected. The stock exchange nowadays, it is a picture of the positive evolution of the Greek economy and the new development strategy we have followed. The Athens Stock Exchange in the first 8 months remained at the top of performance. The Athens Stock Exchange has the second best performance of indexes in 2023. Even if we see in the last weeks we have a correction in the Greek stock exchange, it still remains at the top 5 At the same period, we need to remember that the global index increased by 17% and the European by 7%. This is the second year we have good performances, but of course past results do not forecast future ones. The capitalization of the market exceeded 90 billion. And at the end of August, capitalization had an increase of 34.5% or 22.6 billion compared to a year earlier when the upward trend started. Capitalization started so now it is 55% more. The exchanges activities remain stable above 100 millions in 2023, and on an annual basis the daily value of transactions is around 7 million. At the same time, we have foreign investors participating. In 2023, they have increased by 53%, and locals have also increased. We have new investors since the beginning of the year by 28%. Of course, we have started from a low point. So what is the competitive edge of the Athens Stock Exchange and why someone should be listed? I need to mention nonetheless the following. The main benefit for a company to be listed is to find funds. Additionally, a listed company is recognized and its transformation to a new transparency model via governance by a new way of management which has some costs. We have a modern business model which decreases risks and allows access to funds from abroad as well. With the tools of the Athens Stock Exchange can support all these companies until they are listed and later for future growth and development. The Athens Stock Exchange has an experience of 147 years and offers a variety of services before listing and after listing, which are not taken for, which should not be taken for granted. Something extremely important: the Athens Stock Exchange offers a very flexible fast-track course for companies. The whole process is fulfilled in 8 weeks and has a more competitive cost compared to other big stock exchanges. We take actions in order to take measures to decrease the cost and help companies remain listed in our stock exchange. An advantage is the personal service offered by our executives. This is something that it is from the first experiences companies have and have underlined. I need to mention here that in the regulatory market of the stock exchange we have 147 companies in transactions. What we need to bear in mind is that the majority of those companies, even during difficult times of the crisis, grew a lot. At the same time, the alternative stock exchange market offers to SMEs with vision prospects for dynamic growth. in corporate governance, preparing them for the institutional market. The alternative market has to show companies that multiplied in size after they are listed in a difficult environment of the last years, and then they became part of the main market. The micro fundamentals, which is also important to bear in mind in 2022, the main market companies had a record year after 15 years, and you all understand what is happening in 2023. In 2022, we had dividends, record dividends by the listed companies, and the performance was 5.5. The picture of in the 8 years concerning the listed companies, the performance of the 22 billions will be exceeded by the performances of 2023. So I gave you an overview of the dynamics of the Athens Stock Exchange in 2023, which is expected to become stronger after we acquire the investment grade. So we will be part in the next years of the developed countries. That is a step forward for the Athens Stock Exchange and the listed companies. All these years we've been preparing for the new era. You see our strategy on the slide. I presented them last year as well. We try to implement the same strategy. The main pillar of our strategy is to reinforce the alternative activity of the stock exchange. That is the main challenge that I accepted by assuming by taking office. We want to become extroverts. We want to attract the interest from local and international companies. We are happy to see that we have a very satisfactory pipeline for new companies to be listed in the main and alternative markets. And we have seen that a lot of foreign funds are now interested in us. We made a presentation last March, and we continue believing that in the opportunities that arise for our market and for your sector. Openness is not road shows and conferences, even though they are very difficult to organize for the listed companies. But we need to have cooperation that will allow us to speed up in the future. Indicatively, we announced our cooperation with Air Carbon Exchange. So it is one of the voluntary carbon markets in order to have a transparent market for carbon emissions in Greece. It will be the first in Europe. If implemented, it will allow for companies, not only from Greece, but from the wider area, to facilitate in achieving the target of zero emissions, and it will create an infrastructure, if we are successful, at European and global level that can support our country in dealing with issues of climate change. And since we're talking about environment, we all think of ESG. We recognized our institutional role, so we do promote ESG. We have taken a lot of information of the past years, but I will mention quite recently, in 2023, we created Athens ESG data portal, collecting ESG data for local businesses and investors who wish to know information about the ESG activities of companies. This creates a new standard for companies, and we have received very good grades from ESS. Before I rest my case, So I would like to address to all of you, as we have said, we work systematically trying to grow and develop the Athens Stock Exchange, focusing on Greek entrepreneurship. This is the bottom line of all these discussions. In order to achieve this objective, all involved parties need to cooperate. This is how I end all my speeches, including the Athens Stock Exchange, the Hellenic Capital Market Commission, and of course the institutional investors. That requires a dialogue with the investors in Greece and abroad. We cooperate with all the above institutions to promote reforms that will bring the stock exchange in the new digital era. You will see all these changes at the end of the year. Thank you all very much for your attention. The minister will be here in 10 minutes, so I would like to invite Mr. Tsopelas, Chairman and Marketing Director of McKinsey Hellas, who will deliver a speech. And of course, I would like to invite and now I will present the panelist, Mrs. Lazarakou, Chair of the Hellenic Capital Market Commissions, Dimitris Papalexopoulos, Chairman, Hellenic Federation of Enterprises, Mr. Yannis Skondopoulos, CEO of Athens Tech Exchange, Professor Chariklia Apalagaki, Acting General Director, Hellenic Bank Association. Nikos Vetas, is he here? Yes, he is. General Director, Foundation for Economic Industrial Research. And Chris Esopos, Chairman, Hellenic Fund and Assets Management Association, Alpha Trusts. So the presentation is there for the panel to be able to see. I am Mr. Tsopelas. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation. I'm very pleased, and the message I'm going to spread is very positive.
Already we are one step before the investing rating, and this is due to the fact that the Greek economy seems to be very good, and just because we have very hard fundamentals that lead us to understand that this prospect for growth is good, and maybe it's going to be better than is now foreseen. So we have 4 or 5 fundamentals, and I'm going to focus on these in my speech. I'm also going to focus on 6 important points, which are called headwinds in our jargon. And you have to consider them so that we can have a better evolution. Of course, we wanted to report based on specific analysis. We saw GDP in 2018 at the left of the screen, and then we saw the GDP at 2023, and this 269 millions is what would be the GDP if, during the crisis, we had followed the growth rates of Europe. To the right part of the screen, you see an analysis showing that if we want to reach the GDP that we had in 2008, before the crisis, we need to progress with 2.8% annual growth. Also, we need to know what is the percentage of annual increase of growth so that we can reach in 2030 the same levels as other European players. And this is much higher. And if there was no crisis, then the number is 6.5%. So we expect to reach the levels of 28 before 2030. And we'll hope that we'll reach positive figures and reach what Ireland or Spain or Italy have managed until now. This is a good analysis showing exactly what is foreseen by the organizations for this growth. As I told you, I'm going to focus on 4 or 5 fundamentals. The first deals with the hard path of investments. A certain part of this path regards the FDI, the foreign investment. The second regards the emergence of new businesses, the entrepreneurship growing, plus competitiveness of the Greek economy, which rises. Also, number 3, we have a strong banking system ready to support this growth. And finally, we have public-state economics, steady, robust, with a good outlook, and decreased debt in terms of sovereign debt and household debt. At the left, you see all investments in billions, 22% of the GDP, which was 25 before the crisis, and all-time low was 22% in 2016. We see growth is strong in both private and public investments. If we break down private investments in domestic and foreign, we'll see that both these indicators are positive. It's important that foreign investments are now 20% of the total investments. I'm speaking about the private sector. Fortunately, we have good inflows into the country from various funds. We started with 85 billions, 40 from the new NSRF and 31 from the RRF. Now, the RRF is a very special case. If we consider the other European countries and see which is the percentage of the GDP over, the RRF over GDP, as this is the indicator to show how much money you get, you'll see that we're topping the group. Romania and Italy just behind us, and then Portugal, Spain, while the average is 5, and Germany just takes 1. We got 17. Let me observe here regarding FDI. It's good that we see this indicator growing, but if we dig a little deeper, we'll see that the participation of foreign investments in new projects, which are the important ones for the GDP, are only 30%, 30%. So if we want to increase foreign investments, and if we want, we also want them to focus on the new investing opportunities and new projects. Considering investments, we can also say that we can also speak about consumption. At the left side, you see consumer sentiment. But to the right, we'll see something very interesting. If we keep prices flat without any inflation, that is, we'll see that consumption remains very resilient. Upper right shows typical consumption by households, and then you'll see retail commerce. You see that in both cases, despite the problems, the outlook remains robust. So we spoke about investments, we spoke about consumption. What about productivity? To the left, we see productivity of the economy. I mean, output per hour worked. To the right, we see something very interesting. We analyze the harmonized unit level cost and approached it in comparison to 37 countries that we transact with. We see the progress from 2010 until today, and we'll see that we have a better productivity. In other words, we have a higher output for every hour that we work, and the cost of every hour is lower. This is a very important fundamental that helps the growth prospect. And as I said before, the banking system is stronger. To the left, you see the subsidies and deposits showing liquidity in the banks. To the right, you see the falling of NPEs, non-performing exposures. The bank's books are better now, and you see the results to the lower right. At Tier 1 at 14.5%, while the ECB instruction is for 14.7%. You see also the improvement of cost. The ratio of cost to income has reached 38%, while in 2015 we had 61%. And the shops are lesser in number. So the branches of the banks are not so numerous anymore. As regards the debt, sovereign debt or private debt are decreasing. And private debt include corporate or household debt. This is a good opportunity for the market. If the banks can subsidize, they can finance new investments, and households can finance their consumption. Of course, we have to be cautious, because what happened in 2009 was exactly that we increased consumption, but we did that with borrowed money. Also, fiscal protection is important, and we have to consider certain parameters here. But it seems now that we are robust enough and to keep this level. Now, we have to be careful in 6 areas so that we remain in this good course. 3+3. We have to solve quickly and in a systematic manner, first, inflation, and in a structural way, not temporarily. We have measures, we don't have time to analyze them. We see a deceleration of inflation. It will continue, but again, we might reach higher prices, higher figures than expected. Second, trade deficit. This is problematic. It is a bit better due to tourism, as Mr. Kondopoulos said, but that's not enough. We need synergies to tackle the trade deficit. And finally, still we have structural barriers to growth and competitiveness. We are better, but we can do even more, even better. And digital economy can help. So we need to tackle these 3 things immediately. Also, we have to watch out for 3 more things in the future. First, to maintain fiscal flexibility in order to deal with the some issues that might be problematic, like natural disasters, for example, or to tackle with any delays in the impact of inflation on state expenditure. The second thing regards the absorption of RRFs from the real economy. In the beginning, we had a good absorption rate. Now this is decelerating, and we have to deal with this immediately. And last, we want to focus on the FDI, the foreign direct investments, which need to be increased, and we'll need to be certain that this goes to new operational projects or infrastructures. So Greece can act on these 6 factors and be sure about a better future. We are certain about this, and that's why we're very happy. Thank you.
Έχουμε την ενημέρωση ότι
Unfortunately, the minister is still caught in traffic, and we do not know how and if he will manage to come. So let's continue with our panelists. If he comes, of course, we're going to pause and give him the floor. Mr. Tsoupalas, please stay. You need your iPad with you. Yes, of course. I know that you never go anywhere without your tablet. Yes. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be with you in this panel. I believe that we are going to have a very fruitful discussion. Let me turn on my tablet, and of course, I need it because it's trendy, but also because I start forgetting a bit. So let me start with Mrs. Lazarako. Of course, the capital markets are going to be very important, both in Greece and in other countries, because we are entering an era where we see a slight over-regulation, more than maybe that was we were accustomed to some years ago. What is going to be the impact on the real economy? Thank you, Mr. Tsoupalas, for this question. You include many issues in just one question. Let me start with regulation. Yes, indeed, we have more and more demands because we have more rules. In my introduction, I mentioned especially the managers, the fund managers, because we see huge changes here. The FMB, for example, will multiply the obligations of fund managers. Many people already know the obligations. Reporting, for example, is more strict. Internal audit controls. The RES comes for regarding retail investment. So we see regulation growing. In other areas, after Lehman Brothers in 2008, we had MiFID II, which bring with it a tsunami of regulations in Europe after 2014. So for many years, we see in this intensity of regulations. On the other hand, we see an effort so that the legislation becomes more flexible because we understood that we had an overregulation. But in total, we'll not keep this behind us. We'll not get rid of this overregulation. That's why in my introductory speech, I said that it's important for the Greek market as a whole to be prepared to know exactly what is going to come in the future. And we're trying to support and help understand not only regulation or sustainability or the other issues that I mentioned in my speech, but we try to make people understand what's the justification for this regulation and for the legislation, and what is going to be the impact on the funds and their management. So as a supervising authority, we're going to be close to the market, supporting the market. If we see any regulations in other countries that are beneficial, for example, liquidity management tools, we are going to lobby for such legislation to be adopted. If we see other tools that do not exist in other countries while we have them, then we can make them grow and mature. And at the end of the day, the objective for all these changes is to provide protection to the investors and to the market. And also, as a country, we need to be sure that all these changes that will come will be important for all of us and in the most protective way for the investors. Mr. Papalexopoulos. We spoke about investments, about consumption, and about exports. As regards investments and exports, what's the outlook nowadays? Both regards the domestic and FDI. Can the country increase FDI, attract higher FDIs? And as regards exports, how can we become more extrovert? Let me start by thanking for your invitation. Let me start with a general remark. I do agree with the optimistic spirit that you spread in the room in your speech, with two asterisks. The first regards Europe, and I'm referring to the recession in Germany especially, and the structural deficit of competitiveness in Europe, which accelerates. But that's another discussion for another day. The second asterisk regards the fact that it's not a given fact that this developing momentum will be turned into a maintainable long-term robustness. If we can manage to take advantage of what happens today and act wisely for the next 3-4 years, then the prospects are good. Let me now answer to what you asked me about investments and exports. Indeed, we had 10 years of very bad investments. Now we are going back to higher levels. And we need to cover now the new investors' demands. There is no silver bullet. There is no easy solution. We know what we need to do. We need a more efficient state. We have to offer a better environment. Justice has to be more quick. The private sector should embark on the AI train quickly, in a digital manner, of course. Green development is important for Greece, as all countries, but we have to pay a lot of effort to reach that point. HR has to be seen in concert with the universities. Startups have to be left to grow, and all these together will lead to a result. I want to stress just one thing. Which is not so much in the current discussion, namely that Greece needs small and big enterprises. Small and big enterprises are those that can invest in R&D, in digitization, in human resources, in exports. They can become member of the international change. According to the European definition, big enterprises are those with more than 250 people, personnel. We have in Europe 30 to 40% with big enterprises, while in Greece we are only at 15%. So we need to reach a higher number of these Greek Mittelstand big enterprises. We need to go towards this direction. We want to see the political will. Mergers are not the simple tool to think about. We have a certain series of policies that have to be adopted so that all labor issues and merging issues and subsidizing issues can be treated. So we have to take the proper measures. But if we set this goal to have more middle and big-size enterprises, we're going to do a leap forward for better exports and a better future. And productivity is much higher with the bigger size. Mr. Kodopoulos, there are many investment opportunities. Borrowing cost is very high. We need new funds, new equity. So in your opinion, looking forward, where shall we find this equity and what's the pipeline for the stock market?
Well, the answer is obvious. From the stock exchange, we do have a problem here. The stock exchange hadn't been used as it should from the business world. In the past, we had better cycles, and we can look forward that this option does not depend on the level of interest rates. It does help, but there is stock. I believe that if we see it as a risk management of a business effort, you need to have available all the basic tools, and the stock exchange is a basic tool. You don't decide just like that a day to be listed. You need to be part of it. You need to use it. And this is, as I believe, answers the challenge you have asked. If we want truly to reinforce or change the allocation, well, the size of businesses in Greece, the stock exchange is a main tool. It has happened in the past, and it can happen now and in the future. Small businesses in the past became bigger by finding funds through the stock exchange. What actually exists is there is a psychological trauma in the Greek society starting back in 1999, and the rest of 20 years were people tarnished. So, well, the funds will come from. Well, we do have a lot of opportunities right in Greece. For me, Greece right now is an investment opportunity looking ahead. Of course, it depends on what else we are going to do. But we are at a very good point to be an investment option. It can start from people abroad. New funds will come from abroad. And the locals should say, why do they do that? Let us do it as well. It should be done in a systematic way. not fast, but looking into the future, seize the opportunity and change our way of thinking on how the stock exchange and the capital markets can operate. We need to be cautious. We don't have to be jealous of the Europeans. The pipeline is much better, but touch wood. This very moment, there is a serious pipeline in the main market and the alternative one. Yes, we need to, nonetheless, to be very cautious. And we have capital increase as well. Mrs. Apalakaki. The sector, as we have seen, is stable and can play an important role in this growth. There is this point of view that there are businesses that can grow, but they have difficulty. The banks and the association, how do they see this growth path of Greece? I would like to thank the association of the Hellenic banks, and I would like to thank Mr. Esopos, and I would like to thank you for the invitation. We, as Hellenic Bank Association, look at the big picture. We don't intervene in the planning of our members, but we are in a position to present the messages we receive in the last period. As you have already said, we have all the requirements that guarantee the participation of the banking system in support of the development of the country. An environment without problems, an upward trend financially, demand on the part of the businesses, and a stable banking system. I need to remind you that at the beginning of August, when we have the announcement of the stress test for 20 European banks, the Hellenic banks were much better in the worst case scenario. One could say that quite shortly, a banking system which faced 50% of red loans wouldn't be so resilient, but we are. Let's talk with figures, because contrary to what Mr. Fodopoulos say, the recent past forecasts the future. In 2020, 20 billion of loans, and now 30 billion. And now, until today, we are at 14.8. That means that we will have a lot of loans awarded. A lot of these funds coming from exploiting certain tools managed by the development bank. So we did not contribute with funds as banking system, but we showed know-how in financing by using certain tools and programs. Every semester, I would urge you to study this Greek banking system overview. I need to say something. to have, it's important to expand. We had 100 billion loans and now we have 90, but that doesn't mean that we don't have new loans awarded. All the loans are paid off and now we have new ones. Last but not least, I need to tell you that the contribution of RRF, Mr. Papalexopoulos has already said it. What do we want? We want to be part of green transition. 37% is for green transition and digital transformation also. Businesses are indirectly supported by the stability of banking system to be here and say, okay, do we have increased rates? I can offer you an alternative. So being resilient is important, which means that the banking system can assist SMEs, and based on data that we have from EBA, we are at a better point on average in funding, with a trend to be a bit higher in red loans. So the banks are willing to take the risk following the positive trend of the country. Yes, because the whole environment is positive. Having managed difficult situations, you have a know-how and you are active in a more concrete framework. In order to finance green transition, the whole environment should be stable. And RRF resources have specific pillars for funding. So we do that by certifying the appropriateness. Clear? Okay, thank you very much. Professor, what do you think about the perspectives of the economy? In the next question, I will address to you as professor as well. A lot say the growth has some good fundamentals, but it is like a coil. We are a coil that went down, and now it went up. What do you think about the perspectives? First of all, I would like to thank the Hellenic Funded Asset Management Association. Listening to your speech, Mr. Tsopelas, I agree with whatever you said, but we need to be very strict with ourselves. It depends on how ambitious we are. Greece continues to be in the lowest rank of all measurements, not the rhythm, but the level. In Europe, we are not compared positively in innovation, productivity, compared to the USA and Asia. So if our ambition is to escape the crisis we have already faced, no, we are not in crisis. Revenues increase, investments increase, and the coil you mentioned is there. It's triple, one might say. It is what we owe to ourselves after this 10-year debt crisis. We were very smart of how to destroy our economy. There was no reason to have our GDP dropped by 25%. we could have a balance by a drop of our GDP by 12%. So there is the second well, we were affected more by COVID since we were dependent on tourism, transportation, and there is a third one that has political stability. We have a government that is not feeling bad when it talks about attracting foreign investment, etc., etc. So if we add RRF, it's not only these funds, but also the fact that because of the macroeconomic developments, the fiscal policy was such that we had funds for free. So it was difficult to attract investments, but now things have changed in the next 2 or 3 years, except if we are self-destructive or we follow a very negative European environment. The next 2-3 years will be good years for our economy. But what's next? An economy, if you open the first page of the finance manual, depends on 3 things. Labor. Well, unemployment dropped to 10%. Nonetheless, in the mid-term, we have a demographic problem that does not concern the total of population, but the working ages. The percentage there is of population is quite low. So if we tax it to pay the pensions of the rest, they will go. Investments. We will have investment more with the RRF and as we move forward. Nonetheless, it's not that we are quite low, but stability that is needed to have entrepreneurship and openness. We haven't reached that yet. It is not a question of a bill. One invests in the frame of this entrepreneurship. It has to do with profit. We have a problem on how we are approaching profit. In profit, you cannot lose money. It's bad. But if you don't lose money, it means to take risks. You cannot always make money. We consider that bad. So we haven't managed what other countries do have, to have a size of heavy in the sense that doesn't change from one day to the next entrepreneurship. Yes, the coil operates. A lot of things have changed for the better. I don't see imminent risks right now, but if the ambition is not to be ranked low and be the 5th from the end, and the ambition is a country to escape crisis like Finland, Singapore. We have these example of countries that are of our size. They have well-trained personnel. They have disbursement. The difficulty here is to balance between the good course we have and not misunderstand it, thinking that we have solved all our problems. And 2 words here. The financial policy, because of the pandemic, gathered a lot of decisions in a center. What will happen with the salaries, with the subsidies, the prices? We need to be very cautious because what can bring resources, funds, either we talk about the stock exchange or the banking system or human capital, is to have an economy with stable rules and not over-regulated. What you have already mentioned about the productivity gap, the last figures are 30% between the United States and Europe, and it tends to increase. Mr. Esopos, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to be here and have this discussion, which is exceptional. A lot of us believe that the stock exchange picture represents real economy. I wanted to ask you, is that true? What kind of initiatives your association takes in order to improve real economy and grow it? Thank you for the invitation. A picture, 1,000 words. In Greece, this picture has two approaches. The arithmetic ones. Some of you here remember an index of 6,500 units and one of 450 units, and this year's, which is 1,000 plus units. All these years with these fluctuations, we had a very intensive banking sector. The banking sector in the past represented 40% of the value of the stock exchange. With all that happened, banks zeroed the value of their shareholders 3 times, and now we have a fall of the index, which is behind us. Now we have a very healthy banking sector. We have a consolidated banking sector. In all these years, of course, even though we had very good companies, listed or not, that had exceptional results, openness, we have our exports increased, and in 2023 we have 20 companies, each of them in stock exchange value more than 1 billion euros, which is not the petty Greece with the small enterprises we used to have in the past. If we see the real picture, the picture of a stock exchange in Greece or abroad is not the mirror of economy, but it is forecasting the real economy ahead. In Greece as abroad, there is this correlation. We see it, fluctuations we experience lately, having absorbed the levels of the figures of the index. We move in the fluctuation of the Greek economy and international economy, because we cannot be alone. We have growth in our country, but there is an external event like energy crisis that influence the results. In Greece, we have something else, like an association of funds and assets management. We try to remedy, improve incentives. Our objective is to have inflows, capital inflows. We believe that in the expensive money we have, we proceed with new shares. We want to see more companies per sector. some sectors are underrepresented, and the Greek economy needs more sectors in the stock exchange because what the listed ones do not actually depict the real economy. We are optimistic about what is happening right now and in the future, and the course of the Greek economy will help in the growth of the stock exchange. Mr. Papalexopoulos mentioned about the foreign investors. Foreign investors in the last years have more than 55% participation in the Greek stock exchange. If we take into consideration the owners of the companies, private individuals participate at low percentages, but in the past investors have private investors have shown that if things go well, everybody invests. In the second round, I start with the same order. Mrs. Lazarakou, the perception of all of us is that the Capital Market Commission has taken a lot of steps forward under your leadership, the way it is organized, its impact, etc. What is the agenda of your organization? What are the needs you have in order to be more effective with your work? I need to say the following. In order to have a strategy that has to do with a lot of things, we need knowledge of the environment, of the legislation, the challenges that we have ahead as a capital market. We need to deal with the challenges and take advantage of the opportunities. Either it is a market or a capital market commission. We need to understand where we stand in the ecosystem, the challenges, the changes. I mentioned earlier about SFDR, etc. One of the main issues in capital markets is digital transformation. Younger generations use their mobiles for everything. Can we talk about a new era with digital transformation throughout the ecosystem and the Capital Market Commission not to move forward in this new day where it will be able to run and supervise this ecosystem with this technology we see in the capital markets? The big issue is that. A second issue that has to do with knowledge of markets. Mr. Papalexopoulos mentioned earlier about competitiveness. What does Europe do at the beginning? Europe tries to have a single market, especially in the funds where this market will compete the markets of the United States and Asia. We see a more centralized market. We, as a supervisor, should see how to manage the data, as the market should see how to move forward in rationalizing to be ready to solve its issues compared to understand what is coming. So the supervisor should also understand what changes need to happen in order to prepare. So knowledge is number one, challenges is number two, like digital transformation, understaffing, or supervisory convergence. We need to have convergence in order to avoid conflicts among supervisors. So we need to deal with all these challenges and, of course, take advantage of the opportunities because, for example, we have fulfilled recently a very difficult task which had to do with our organizational structures and how we will model our procedures, improve them, digitize them, etc., which was a huge challenge. It was the first step for the next steps to come. We took advantage of NSRF. Respectively, the next step we're working is digital transformation. And this we have asked, and we are in RRF. So we want to deal with digital transformation. This is our target, our strategy to be more modern in our supervision. We have started earlier, and we are moving forward quite, and we are determined. We set targets and we implement them one by one in order to talk about a modern capital market.
I think that these three things that you mentioned are going to be fundamental for the next time to come. But I do need to say congratulations, because we have progressed a lot. Mr. Papalexopoulos, we're speaking about growth and development. What are the initiatives that SEV takes for development? Which is SEV's agenda for its members or the state? In SEV, we want to be the independent, responsible voice of modern entrepreneurship. Within this framework, we have a special role as a partner, a social partner, and we try, on the one hand, to have documented proposals for the state to follow entrepreneurship, and on the other hand, we try to help our members to respond to all the challenges that they meet. These are the main missions. I do believe, though, that at the same time, one has to do many more things. As, for example, we need to consider the long-term transformation of Greece. We want innovative Greeks. We embrace the emerging system of startups in Greece, which has difficulties due to the international landscape. We believe that based on the recent fundraising that they have reached 8 billion, and they have a good prospect. So we have a series of actions there, apart from convincing the state to take certain measures. Also, we have the Innovative Greeks platform, and we network them with the Greek diaspora. There are members who live outside Greece, and they want to help Greek companies. So we try to internationalize this effort. This is important. We've taken some other initiatives, but the most important is that we create this network, and we see traditional and startup companies speaking with each other. We are doing some coaching. We don't have much time. It would be very interesting to have half an hour to speak about this endeavor. Second, we all say that we don't have enough skills. So we started another initiative, Skills for Job, after McKinsey from Portugal, and we have it in Greece. The idea here is that we don't just do training, but we have to see skills as a holistic thing that sees the general skills of people and their applications in the jobs market. That's an end-to-end system. We started this last year with 2 small cohorts because our members said we couldn't have electronics and engineers and mechanical engineers. So we had these 2 cohorts, and we scale it up to 4,000 people this year. Of course, we're not going to make history, but we might do, though. Moreover, we have a memorandum of understanding with major universities in the country for industrial PhDs, apprenticeships, and other things. This is a very mixed bag with many challenges and many good experiences already. I think that in Greece we have started understanding that universities have to speak with the market, which was a taboo for Greece. Also, the Junior Achievement Award, teach entrepreneurship at schools as something positive. In hundreds of schools all over the country, we have competitions on entrepreneurship. So we have to do a lot apart from the policies that we have to embrace so as to change the mentality of the society. It is very important that these initiatives don't speak about licensing anymore, but they start speaking about life skills. So whatever happens will have long-term impact. Of course, we don't need any more think tanks, we need do tanks. Mr. Godopoulos. What about the investing grade? Will this rating give us a boost forward? Yes, this is the hot question, but I don't think it's so significant. I think that the Bank of Greece analyzed in its appendix the situation, because I would like the government to read this analysis. We were at 50%, now we are in 80%. I would say that we have reached 100%. It doesn't matter. This grade was a necessary destination. We are here. We are changing game now. We are changing the tier. We have to start changing the game we play. But of course, in practical terms, we can know which is the cost of the new endeavors before we see any flows whatsoever. For example, in order to have flows, in practical words, we would need to enter, we would need to have the investment grade from 2 houses at least, regarding the evaluation of our debt, etc. Also, we have to take the example of the Japanese investors who just vanished in thin air at some moment, and then we started discussions with them again so that they could come back via the public markets. We could have important funding from there. Beyond that, if we start thinking as investors about solutions, at some point we might start discussing about specific investments, and we discuss again and again and again. But we have to consider the big picture as well. Let me give you an example. In the stock market, we have certain members who are clearing the market. If we do not have the grade that we need, we'll give them a different treatment. So we want business-friendly investments. And we would like front-loaded investments without taking any risks. If we have this, we shall have a specific credit rating, we are going to be very nice to each other, and we will be able to manage everything in the best way. And we'll have very good relations with both Greeks and foreign investors who now cannot take the risk of a fluctuating environment. I believe that all people who are in this room today, they could give us a lot of examples showing that now that we have a good landscape to start creating new tools. So the game is changing. So the aspiration should change. Yes, indeed, that's good. It depends how many changes we need to make. Ms. Apalaki, the change in between the interest rates of the deposits to loans is one of the biggest in Europe. What do you do with this? We have 180 million in deposits now. The market wonders, where are we going? Do you have any thoughts about this? This was a very good introduction that you made, and I'm going to give you the best answer. The European Central Bank started increasing the interest rates in July 2022, but especially as regards subsidies, the change will start showing after the first semester of the current year. Let me also remind you that after many years, in an environment where all European banks had negative interest rates, the Greek banking system never did that, though the situation was really difficult. So the association said that it would be good to have a qualitative analysis. The factors are, one, see what is the quality of these deposits. 85% of the depositors today, deposit accounts, to be more accurate, has a balance which is not higher than 5,000 euros. This is not a balance to be considered as investment monies. So this is a basic assumption. How can I compute my interest rate? On what basis? Number two, it is a thought of the Bank of Greece and the commercial banks to reference to the market. However, we want two dimensions in this reference. These two categories, these two dimensions are the monies within the bank account, but that the depositor will withdraw at any moment, and those monies that will stay with the banks in for long-term or for time products, etc. From the 180 billions that you mentioned, only 25% are in time products. So we have a lot of accounts, small balances, and very low percentages of really good products. So on the other hand, subsidies have a specific risk, but in deposits you cannot be certain about the volatility of these balances. Nevertheless, as we publish every month, we know that today the Greek banks, in their new deposit products, they offer a higher interest rate than the European examples. Also, in the new grants, we have lower growth rates than the ones seen in Europe. And of course, the environment is becoming more stable, but yet it's not fully stabilized. So I can refer you to the bulletin of the Bank of Greece that was just published some days ago in order to decide which is the monetary cost. We are not interested in the overall sum of the monies within the banks. We want to see what time products we have for 1 year or more, and the balance ceiling. So the gap is decreasing. Is that right? Yes, of course, that's right. Just because we were delayed in our grants, we delayed to reflect this change. But if we compare ourselves with Portugal or with Cyprus, which are also in similar figures, we are better than both these countries. We are at 1.70. So comparing ourselves against Portugal and Cyprus, we're better. Okay, we're going to finish in a few moments, but that's a really very good discussion. Do we have any news about the minister? No? No. Mr. Vetas. What should happen? What are the major transformations that we need to go under so that we can change the limit of our ambitions? What about the structural challenges? What would you suggest? Technically speaking, the country needs more monies with the bank so that we can have a basis for investments. In other words, 1 out of 10, only 10% of Greeks pay taxes for their income. These 10%, if they have higher income than the minimum, pay too heavy taxes. If this changes, then people will become motivated. So what can they do? First, they can work less, and we see that maybe mainly in women and young people. Second, work with black money, and I think that we have the biggest black market, black economy in Europe. And number 3 is leave your country and work elsewhere. And I think that the brain drain has been moderated, but it hasn't stopped. So I think that we have to regulate labor in such a way so that it can be it can embrace motivation for entrepreneurship and investment. A systematic landscape is important for someone to understand, to decide where to live and work. So this is something that we need to do. You cannot have a country where most people work with black money and don't pay taxes, and many good people leave the country. As Mrs. Palagaki said, she explained the reason why interest rate is low. Everyone is right. But I would say that if people keep their monies in the bank, then they can have good returns. Of course, there are other solutions, as for example, real estate, which was a critical area for the development of the economy at that time. On the other hand, it was a gray zone up to recently. In our foundation, we have described in a very detailed manner prospects related to the pension system or the deposit systems or the labor system. And we have recommended several proposals for the economy. In order to be able to have more people who will systematically be working legally and corporations that will draw their monies from a well-developed and high-quality capital market, this is the virtuous circle so as to have good growth. Thank you. Thank you very much. One last thing and we close. One last comment about insurance funds. What do you expect? I agree with Mr. Vetas, and I can say that insurance is amazing, and security funds are a problem in Greece. The demographics are negative for many reasons. Many people, we don't have young people. The state now tries to substitute defined benefit with defined contribution. But of course, it's important to speak about transformations and reforms. But of course, we need to speak about mentality and culture. Greeks, many times, believe in God. They don't care. They say that God will protect me tomorrow. But sometimes God doesn't come. So Greeks need a supplementary pension. That's not a simple thing. So we need to see reforms. People have to learn that it is important to have some money aside. People have to be educated at school to become entrepreneurs, to learn about the value of money, to learn about where to invest. After that, as Mr. Veta said, the two dimensions are important. Handling tax evasion challenges and increasing the net available income of the employees, the salaried persons. And of course, Greece is similar to European markets in terms of taxation grades, but the ceilings are different. For example, we have high taxation in Switzerland or in Germany, but after 200,000 euros. We have this grade after this tier after 40,000. 65% of the Greek taxpayers are in the lowest two tiers. So we cannot have any mentality of entrepreneurship this way, because the employer pays 100 and the employee gets 35 in their pocket, because the 65 is tax. So that's not a healthy approach to entrepreneurship, to fostering investments. The members of our association try to acknowledge this fact and provide recommendations. It is important to have proper education because the state is not a deus ex machina to come and give us money at the last moment. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This was an excellent conversation, an excellent discussion. Thank you.
Να μεταφέρω τον Υπουργό ότι...
Unfortunately, the minister was caught in traffic and he couldn't come. He will not come. Let's have a 10 minutes break. And please be back in 10 minutes exactly. We're having a very interesting discussion after that in between two distinguished speakers.
Νιώθετε πως ήρθε η ώρα να ξεκινήσετε τη διαδρομή σας στις επενδύσεις. Αλλά να ζητάτε μια κατεύθυνση που να ταιριάζει στις ανάγκες και τις δυνατότητές σας με βάση τον δικό σας οικονομικό προγραμματισμό. Γιατί θέλετε να αξιοποιήσετε και να επενδύσετε τα χρήματα που μπορεί να περισσεύουν από τα έξοδά σας για να τα τοποθετήσετε σταδιακά σε μια επένδυση σε διαφορετικές στιγμές και αν το αποφασίσετε στην πορεία, να μπορείτε να αυξήσετε το κεφάλαιο που επενδύετε. Ο δρόμος για αυτό που ψάχνετε είναι τα αμοιβαία κεφάλαια. Σας δίνουν τη δυνατότητα να ξεκινήσετε την επένδυση με ένα ποσό και παράλληλα να επενδύετε σταδιακά όποτε εσείς το επιθυμείτε, επιτυγχάνοντας χρονική διασπορά στο χαρτοφυλάκιό σας. Έτσι, εξομαλύνονται οι επιπτώσεις από τις διακυμάνσεις των αγορών και εσείς περιορίζετε το άγχος σας για το αν επενδύετε στη σωστή στιγμή. Με το πρόγραμμα περιοδικής επένδυσης σε αμοιβαία κεφάλαια Master Plan, έχετε ευελιξία στο ποσό και τη συχνότητα των καταβολών σας και μπορείτε να χτίσετε ένα επενδυτικό χαρτοφυλάκιο χωρίς να χρειάζεται να επενδύσετε ολόκληρο το κεφάλαιό σας εφάπαξ. Ξεκινήστε σήμερα τη διαδρομή σας και ενημερωθείτε για τη χρονική διασπορά με τακτικές καταβολές σε αμοιβαία κεφάλαια σε ένα κατάστημα Eurobank ή στο eurobank.gr.
What does it mean to be a leader in the new digital era? It means to lead the way towards digital transformation, changing everything. Changing the way 125,000 businesses and professionals work. Investing in your people as they are your power. Evolving and joining your forces with new, innovative partners. Leading the way of business into the digital future. That is what being a leader means. Epsilon Net Group, the new digital era of businesses.
Μεγαλώνουμε σημαίνει ερχόμαστε πιο κοντά στα σχέδιά μας. Στην NN μεγαλώσαμε και δημιουργήσαμε τη μεγαλύτερη ασφαλιστική εταιρεία στην Ελλάδα. Έτσι, συνεχίζουμε με διευρυμένο δίκτυο, ευέλικτα ασφαλιστικά προγράμματα και ακόμη μεγαλύτερη ευθύνη να στηρίζουμε τα σχέδιά σας και όσα έχουν σημασία για εσάς. Γιατί η ζωή είναι πάντα μπροστά.
Νιώθετε πως ήρθε η ώρα να ξεκινήσετε τη διαδρομή σας στις επενδύσεις. Αλλά αναζητάτε μια κατεύθυνση που να ταιριάζει στις ανάγκες και τις δυνατότητές σας με βάση τον δικό σας οικονομικό προγραμματισμό. Γιατί θέλετε να αξιοποιήσετε και να επενδύσετε τα χρήματα που μπορεί να περισσεύουν από τα έξοδά σας για να τα τοποθετήσετε σταδιακά σε μια επένδυση σε διαφορετικές στιγμές και αν το αποφασίσετε στην πορεία, να μπορείτε να αυξήσετε το κεφάλαιο που επενδύετε. Ο δρόμος για αυτό που ψάχνετε είναι τα αμοιβαία κεφάλαια. Σας δίνουν τη δυνατότητα να ξεκινήσετε την επένδυση με ένα ποσό και παράλληλα να επενδύετε σταδιακά όποτε εσείς το επιθυμείτε, επιτυγχάνοντας χρονική διασπορά στο χαρτοφυλάκιό σας. Έτσι, εξομαλύνονται οι επιπτώσεις από τις διακυμάνσεις των αγορών και εσείς περιορίζετε το άγχος σας για το αν επενδύετε στη σωστή στιγμή. Με το πρόγραμμα περιοδικής επένδυσης σε αμοιβαία κεφάλαια Master Plan, έχετε ευελιξία στο ποσό και τη συχνότητα των καταβολών σας και μπορείτε να χτίσετε ένα επενδυτικό χαρτοφυλάκιο χωρίς να χρειάζεται να επενδύσετε ολόκληρο το κεφάλαιό σας εφάπαξ. Ξεκινήστε σήμερα τη διαδρομή σας και ενημερωθείτε για τη χρονική διασπορά με τακτικές καταβολές σε αμοιβαία κεφάλαια σε ένα κατάστημα Eurobank ή στο eurobank.gr.
Είμαστε 10 λεπτά πίσω. Ναι, ο Μπόστον πήγεται. Το φαΐ δεν είναι αυτό το πρόβλημα. Θα το κόψουμε, αλλά... Θα ήθελα να δουλεύει αυτό πάνω. Γιατί άμα φωνάξω δεν με ακούνε και έξω. Όχι. Πού ακούω τον εαυτό μου. Θα ήθελα να παρακαλέσω να έρθετε πίσω στις θέσεις σας.
To take the seats. We're lagging behind schedule. In the previous panel, we talked about the lack of competitiveness of Euro compared to the USA. We will have with us the Chancellor for Economic Affairs of U.S. Embassy, Eric Holmbrink, in discussion with Chris Esopos.
Looking forward to your conversation with Chris. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, for being with us for a second year in a row. Everybody's talking about FDI coming in this country, and guess what? Probably your country is our prime candidate for this FDI. So can you give us a color about the current political and economic situation that you face towards Greece?
Yeah, sure. You know, obviously it was the Mitsotakis government won a second term handily, so they're in government, not in coalition. And so we expect the sort of market-based reforms that they are taking to continue. So leaving the politics aside, as far as people making capital investment decisions, that's a welcome That's definitely a welcome outcome. We're seeing some of our bigger companies increase their investments, whether it's Microsoft, Digital Realty, Google, on and on. I was just up in Thessaloniki for the opening of the Chubb office, and they can't hire people fast enough. They had a growth plan that is already, they're already trying to exceed it. So I think as far as FDI goes, the big guys are doing really well. I think the next thing that we expect is when Greece gets investment grade status, that can open up a lot more potential FDI from the United States, because a lot of these pension funds and other sort of institutional investors, by their bylaws, cannot invest in countries that are not investment grade. So we hope when Greece gets that, and we thought maybe, at least in the embassy, we thought maybe it would be right now. I guess not. But it is going to happen because Greece's fundamentals are too good. And so I think when that happens, that's going to open up more interest in FDI. And of course, we've got a lot of private equity investors in Greece. They don't really tell us much of what they're investing in or what their numbers are, because if they did, they wouldn't be making money. So there's a lot of interest in Greece, and I think what you see is some of the more sophisticated investors, the big companies, and then the private equity folks who want to make 7, 8, 10% are already here and will continue to be here. So as far as we're concerned, Greece provides a great opportunity for U.S. FDI.
Okay, from the companies that you're talking to, are there any specific sectors of our economy or companies within sectors that are in the prime targets of this FDI? And how hot do you believe that Greece is currently on the U.S. investment scale from 1 to 10?
I'm going to answer this like a diplomat.
It changes every year.
Yeah, I'm going to change the subject. No, I'd say about a 7. For our big investors, it's a 10. There's no doubt about it. For the Pfizers, for all the ones I mentioned, they're extremely happy here and looking to expand. For smaller investors, it's much lower than that. There are challenges here. I think this government has done a really great job in facilitating, the fast track if you invest X amount. But for people under X amount, Greece isn't super attractive, at least for American firms. Greece is far away, for one. And two, if you aren't, a big investor, sophisticated investor, you have to deal with issues with the judiciary, bureaucracy, a number of these other sort of barriers. So on a whole, I'll put it as a 7. As far as specific sectors, obviously the tech sector, one of your previous speakers mentioned, like facilitating, incubating startups, and, another one of your panelists mentioned Portugal, Lisbon. I know this Greek government is looking at doing something like that, either in Athens or Thessaloniki. We in the embassy are working on some of these things. I can't announce anything because there might not be nothing to announce. But there is some real interest by U.S. firms in that. Our ambassador is really interested in making connections with firms that are interested in biotech. We think that's a real opportunity for growth here, and something that we could match what Greece can provide with U.S. investors. That's the other important thing. Greece has to have what's attractive for U.S. investors and U.S. industries. And I think this government has been also really good. They're not, from what I've heard, previous governments are looking at, this is a Greek American who made it good in America, like come back and invest in Greece. And the Greek American is like, the reason my father left Greece was because, we wanted to make money in America. This government's not looking, that's not their outlook. They want Fortune 500 companies. They want listed companies. They want institutional investors in areas of growth. And so that's what we're focused on. That's what our potential investors are in right now and are looking to expand into.
Thank you. You mentioned parts of northern Greece. So after the invasion in the Ukraine, the urge for Greece to become a a kind of energy hub towards Europe from the rest of the world. It's becoming more and more important, I would say, but how do you perceive that as establishing it as a hub?
Well, Greece is going to be an energy hub. It already is taking those steps, whether it's the FSRU in Alexandroupoli that's going to provide exports, including U.S. LNG, to Bulgaria and points further north. One of the things we spend an awful lot of time on in the embassy is trying to develop Greece and help Greece become a bigger energy hub. Part of that's gas through the IGB, and then potentially through the Trans-Balkan pipeline, which reaches Moldova. Moldova has actually purchased gas from Greece through that pipeline, Ukraine, and then points further into Europe. One of the challenges is you don't build infrastructure without having off-takers. And so we're working with our embassies to try to make connections with Greek developers who are looking to sell additional gas. Also, the interconnectors. There are a couple potential interconnectors from North Africa to Greece. I know this Greek government, the new minister we met, Minister of Energy, is talking about a sizable offshore wind development in the Aegean. And so we're also working with the Greek government and your IPTO, ADMIE, to look to facilitate conversations that allow Greece to export green energy to Italy, Bulgaria. That's easy because they're in the EU, or easier. Yeah. And then also we're working with your government right now to establish better connectivity with, say, Albania, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and points further. Because Greece is going to start producing way more energy than it can consume, which is a good thing, but the energy has to go somewhere. So we're working with your government to make that happen. And it's another example of many, many examples of a win-win, where what Greece is doing and their policy approach and what we'd like to see happen are basically the same.
And investing outside one's country always comes with some complaints, difficulties, stressful situations, etc. So what's your feedback from US companies on the drawbacks that they face while investing this FDI coming into Greece? And what's the pressure towards our government to make things more pleasurable?
We don't get a lot of negative feedback, actually. And this is very different than, say, a previous tour in Mexico, where we got a lot of feedback, and most of it was negative. And then Russia, where it was all negative. Our investors their mindset is, we want to work with this Greek government to push things forward. They see this government, even the previous government, as willing to do some reforms in Greece to encourage investment. So when our companies have issues, and usually it's something bureaucratic related, where they're not getting their tax receipts in time, or their VAT back, or permits, and we go in and we talk to the ministry, and the ministers or the staff would just go, okay, we'll work on fixing it. So I think they understand, or how we see it, is you have a government that's really trying to implement some pretty monumental reforms and really change the way the Greek economy works. That's easy to think it, but you have to bring that culture along with you, and that's a lot harder. And so the culture and how the normal way of doing business in Greece hasn't caught up to the ambitions of the government. And so there's a disconnect there. But I can't even think in my over 2 years here where we had a complaint from the government, and the government wasn't very responsive. And now the answer isn't always yes. The answer is not like, okay, America, we'll do what you want. That's not it at all. But what we found is they've been very willing to sit down with our companies and try to work out a reasonable solution. And that's all we can ask for as far as partners go. Perfect.
Now, in a month or so, the U.S. is going into a pre-election year.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think that this pre-election campaign would in any sort derail any FDI towards Greece, or does it really have any impact at all?
I don't think so. As far as any sort of pre-election campaign, it's going to be mainly focused on sort of China, Mexico to a certain extent, kind of our major trading partners where there's some policy disagreement within the two major parties as how to approach those two. As far as Greece goes, everybody loves Greece. And it is Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle in Congress. I think the previous administration was really like Greece. I think our former secretary came here 2 or 3 times. They joke our current president is Bidenapolis because he's so pro-Greece. So I don't, as far as relationships broadly, I think it's still going to be very positive. Just whoever ends up winning, and economically, I don't think you're going to see any change because at the end of the day, people looking to invest in Greece are looking at the fundamentals. They're not looking at what one political party or other political party in the United States says about it. So I think you can continue to see an upward trend. Greece is going to run a budgetary surplus. Tax receipts are always, for the last, 6 quarters or, exceeded expectations. And, I think Greece's biggest challenge right now, and I'm glad you guys are having this forum because you're all ambassadors for the Greek economy in one way or another, is to try to get people to see what's in front of their eyes. Because you still have a lot of, at least in the United States, among certain policymakers and businessmen, they still think of Greece as almost having to leave the Eurozone. And that's old news. That's not what's happening here. And as I said earlier, some of the more sophisticated investors, their eyes are this big when they look at opportunities in Greece. And we just got to sort of bring the rest along.
And a last question. There's a lot of crowd looking at the ports, whether that's Piraeus or Thessaloniki or any other one. So it's a gateway towards non-European commodities coming into Europe, or products, machinery, etc. How do you see this crowded trade in the near future?
Well, one of the things, and we speak with our Bulgarian colleagues, and when Bulgarians come down, they generally like to speak to us about better connectivity. And I think one of the things that through RRF funds, through Greece's commitment to improve rail links and sort of digital links and electricity links, Greece stands to really sort of benefit because it's a direct route. But that infrastructure needs to be built. Now, what comes into ports and what doesn't is sort of not necessarily something we can weigh in on, but it's something that the Western Balkans countries really would like. You mentioned Ukraine before. That's going to take a long time to unravel. And Russia does not play by the rules. They're bombing grain facilities right now. They're trying to impose maximum pain on Ukraine. And so one of the priorities of my government, and something we work on a lot in the embassy, is trying to develop these alternatives. And these alternatives, by and large, are through Greece. You've got the Bosphorus. Right now, whether it's Thessaloniki port or Alexandroupoli, you can move things to, say, Romania in like 3 days faster than you can do by going through the Bosphorus or more. And so if this gets developed, that lessens Russia's ability to menace commerce in the Black Sea. It lessens delivery times, and it's going to allow for economic expansion both in Alexandroupoli, Thessaloniki, in northern Greece, more broadly, by virtue of increased trade. And so that's something I know your government's very keen on developing, and that's something that we're looking to see where we can help, whether it's through our Development Finance Corporation, maybe providing some assistance, but more we're looking at private private actors who are looking to invest or participate in tenders to develop some of this stuff. So that's another thing that we really have our eye on. And, I'll just say it's my last two posts, Mexico City and Moscow. We weren't working together on like really interesting things. Like, I come to my office in Greece and we're working on energy transition or energy exports or they're developing ports and developing connectivity, all these positive things. So it's really a pleasure to be here working in Greece because the partnership is just, at least from our perspective, fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Θα ήθελα να...
I would like to invite for the next panel of paramount interest with the future and the saving through young people's eyes. We would like to welcome Mr. Vasilis Antoniadis, Managing Director and Senior Partner, Financial Institution Leader, and Chariklia Cafe Consultant, and we will have 3 representatives of the young generations. Nevertheless, we see them very rarely. Anne-Sophie Fisher, Associate, Boston Consulting Group, Dimitris Papagiriakopoulos, and Marios Manjaris. Thank you very much for this invitation. When I was called and he told me that in the framework of your work to have a presentation with regard to the saving and future, with regard to younger generation, my first reaction was that it's not gonna be a hard job. We want to present the studies. And he said, no, we don't want to listen, hear what the reports say, but what young people say. So we want to see the future and the saving through young people's eyes. And of course, we can use a lot of statistics for generations X, Y, Z, but the main thing is to hear from the creators of the future, how they perceive the future themselves of our country and savings. Because the future is, since future is here, because disruption in all sectors comes from various disruptors, I have asked my colleague Hara Cafe, who is in BCG think tank, to help me with the coordinator, and I asked from 3 colleagues, Anne-Sophie Fisher, Associate, Boston Consulting Group, Dimitri Papagiriakopoulos, web graduate management science and technology and serial startupper, and Marios Manjaris. I had the honor to meet 4 years earlier when he was a scholarship fellow and now works in Clio News Tours as a data analyst. We want to hear from them how they see these issues. Hara. Welcome everyone. Starting our discussion, how would you describe the current situation of Greek society and economy? What are the opportunities and challenges for young people today? Anne-Sophie, do you want to start? Thank you, Hara. On my part, I believe that the financial crisis was a turning point because it motivated Greece to activate and understand the limitations of public sector. I grew up amid the crisis, and with discussions with my parents and friends, I understood how public sector was omnipresent in our mentality, and it was a solution for most people. So I believe that this change of mentality rekindled Greek entrepreneurship. We see it clearly in that ecosystem of startups, incubators, accelerators throughout the country. And I believe that this is a huge opportunity for the Greek economy and our society. Well, I need to underline that the current investment environment, beyond the opportunities it brings, actually attracts people from abroad. Two examples. Now I am given the opportunity to participate via our web in the Startup Future, which is a global organization for innovation, cooperation of 15 countries, a cooperation of Greece, China. I participated with some colleagues in a project for decreasing trafficking, traffic, and we see how foreign investors come to advise us on how to make a creative startup. In the American College of Greece, we had the first student endowment that allows students to get an experience in managing portfolios for educational purposes. Well, I work for Clio News Tours. Marius is speaking. And it builds audio guides for monuments in Greece and abroad. It started 10 years ago. And in 2018, it became a reality via incubators, accelerators, etc. Clio is one of the many examples that arise in Greece. We do have opportunities. Nonetheless, we have challenges. One is we have a lot of programs in schools. We lag behind with regard to the trends of nowadays. In many courses, some things we learned are not used any longer, are obsolete, and we cannot use them. This is a main impediment for us. More specifically, with regard to the financial sector, how do you perceive it? What do you think with regard to saving? Dimitris, I believe that this very moment, the financial system industry experiences the initial stages of a digital transformation. We can see that from the use of digital payments. Digital transformation is something that we need to do. It will bring performance, safety, security, but it will bring also financial inclusivity because it is accessible. All products are accessible by all people. With regard to saving future, as representative of a generation that grew up amid crisis, we should not lag behind. We need to use online platforms and tools and new technologies like AI to offer new and individualized solutions and automations. And moreover, I would like and I believe that the saving system should change from one-size-fits-all model and have a hybrid solution, a solution that will create a savings funds that will bring security to young people because of the crisis, and looking into the global environment, which is characterized by turmoil, and at the same time it will have the opportunity to take advantage of what is happening at the various stages of our lives.
I do agree with this. We do have different risks. Since I am younger, I would say that I am part of a generation with a commitment to leave the world in a better, as a better place for the next generations. And this is a commitment. This is a mission for us. For me personally, it's a very important goal. Our generation is very sensitive in these matters. So I do believe that this is going to be a very multifaceted challenge for the financial institutions, because they'll need to incorporate certain ESG criteria in their operation. And of course, this regards also the enterprises and their customers, because they will need to examine and assess the social, environmental, etc. risks during funding and during investing. Now, as regards the next question, I am half Greek, half Swiss. So I would say at this moment in my life, I have seen some similarities and differences in between the two countries in youth. In Switzerland, the families have start discussing monies in the family from the young ages of children, and they teach them how to be financially literate. And they also have, they work during the summer, or even they work at home and they get some money, some pocket money, or they go out to the market early on. So they start thinking about money, and they start thinking about having a bank account and some money aside. In Greece, I don't see this so much. Let me say something about what Dimitris said. Data is power. I believe that it can be a currency even, but of course there are risks and challenges. And I think that security, data security is a must in any case. Many times we've seen data breaches and leakages of private information. Cybersecurity is very important. So it has to be important for all. Moreover, I would like to stress about culture that in Greece, as Al-Sophie said, we don't have this concept of putting some money aside. The families do not teach children how to have their wallet or how to have a budget or what it means to not to spend all your money. Looking forward, which is your vision for the Greek economy and the Greek society? And which is your role of the young people in achieving this goal? I come from a very small island. All families there have a tourist company, a tourist business, not company. I work in tourism, and I do understand that tourism is one of the basic industries in Greece. But I do believe that we are reacting. I believe that we have very bright minds, and we don't need to restrict ourselves with tourism only, and we have to open up our minds to other alternatives. Also, the brain drain is a problem for our country. It has been for many years. And indeed, in other countries, one might find many opportunities, but it is our responsibility to give a chance to our country to help our country so that it can help us. Let me add that looking towards the future, it is important to say that we as young people have to promote investment-friendly mentality. In Greece, we are resistant to change, but everywhere people are. So we have to tackle this challenge. Of course, certain steps have been taken in the recent years, both in regards to public administration and in economy, etc. We have digitized part of the public sector, especially during the pandemic. I believe that this is a new habit that has to be established, and we need to see some improvements in the current government. Some acceleration in legal procedures, for example, or simplify some licensing operations, etc. I believe that the best way to foresee future is to create the future. And in order to create future, you need research, education, and literacy. So all the necessary bodies have to invest even further to research, innovation, and support Greek exports and the Made in Greece movement. I believe that we are ready in Greece and internationally to establish a good brand name. The Greek market is a small market, but we have to, if we are extrovert, we can have a very good brand name, and this will be beneficial for jobs in Greece as well. And also, I should focus on two major challenges that we'll need to tackle in the future, demographics being the first one. Already we have started accepting that we'll have a major problem in the future due to that. And the second thing is the brain drain, as Mario said. Many young people want to leave the country to find better opportunities, better jobs. Let me stress that all those, even if some people choose to leave, we should be ambassadors of our country, even abroad, and look back home, because this is what will attract foreign investors here. Thank you very much for being here today, sharing your thoughts and your experiences and your vision about tomorrow. Some last thoughts. Yes, I received so much positive energy, and it is very moving. I have to stress, as we heard, that the best way to to foresee the future is to create the future. This was a very inspiring phrase, dear Dimitris. I noted down that already mentality has started changing. In my generation, when we were young, we wanted to go to work to the public sector. Now, more and more people want to be entrepreneurs. Also, we have a good startup ecosystem. In 2016, we saw the benchmarks from other countries. Now we have a wealthy, a very rich startup community in Greece. We have incubators, we have accelerators. Also, we saw how digital transformation can be used for the financial sector, and also the financial institutions can consider factors like, for example, environment, social issues, which are very important for the young generations, and of course the protection of data. And culture is another thing that I noted down, how it can be cultivated so that we can inspire young people the notion of investing. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope, Chris, that it was exactly what you were thinking to hear. As regards your last comment and institutions being responsible in terms of the society and environment, I have to stress that we emphasize all ESG issues. And we are committed to invest, considering certain restrictions and visibility factors. Of course, this has a cost. It would be interesting for us to see how much young people are ready to understand how the institutional sectors works. I understand that I am part of this new generation, the generation that wants to offer to the society and the environment. I do understand that this has a cost, and of course we think about this cost. I do not have any specific recommendation about this. And I do believe that each one of us have their part to play. We understand that there is a cost in this reform that we are proposing, and I hope that we'll think twice. Let me add something. Of course, ESG has an additional cost, but the difference in our generation, in our young generation, is that we look forward to the future, and we have a long horizon in our vision, and this is our commitment. So we accept the extra risk. I am going to agree. I do understand that there is a cost, but as young people, I do not believe that cost can be taken as long as we have a good opportunity for the future. Thank you. Thank you for these answers.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ και πάλι. Και τώρα θα περάσουμε...
And now we will talk about the institution of institution, Mr. Spiros Pandelias, Director General Prudential Supervision and Resolution Bank of Greece. He will talk to us about current trends and prospects of the Greek banking sector. Good afternoon. First of all, I need to underline that it is my honor, and I want to thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to talk about the Greek banking sector. With regard to the previous panel, we sound more conservative, but we are back to some things we were well aware. General meetings with smiles, balances with profits, and estimates and accounts quite positives, and of course positive prospects. And with regard to supervision, we see more positive things with regard to the resilience. We need to focus on 5 things: the issue of capital adequacy, the assets, the performance and competitiveness above all. I don't want to talk about trivial issues, but I need to underline some things in each and every one of them with regard to the quality of assets and the red loans. We have a sector who 6 or 5 years ago was at a level 45 to 46% of red loans in the total of portfolio, and now all systemic banks are in a single-digit level. This is surprising. Nonetheless, the red loans are higher than the average, than the EU average, from 8.6 up to 1.8. We need to cover, it is necessary to cover in order for our banks to stop being out, to belong to the sector of high.
Εξακολουθούν όμως και είναι ένα κομμάτι της οικονομίας. Εξακολουθούν και είναι ένα κομμάτι το οποίο αντιπροσωπεύει ένα σημαντικό μέρος παραγωγικού δυναμικού.
So the banks need to regulate further their assets and make them more operable, helping the development of the Greek economy. It is a responsibility of all agencies in order to consolidate private debts as they are translated for financial conditions of households and businesses. Liquidity. In the year 2022, we had private deposits of 200 million. What does it mean in practice? That means that voluntarily they can decrease TLTRO in half without any problems in liquidity, to have the liquidity indexes not to be acceptable with a margin above the required, and the ability to finance the economy in the long term. The third part has to do with credit expansion, the performance of private capital, and profitability. For 2022, we had a sector that had an ROI of 13-14%, which is impressive from the EU average, compared to EU average, and creates conditions for the internal capital creation and access of the banks to the markets for all tools available. The issue from the supervision is the resilience of that, when an important part of this profitability has to do with the borrowing and loan rates that are quite different. So resilience is important. The banks have the challenge to improve their balance sheets without endangering their status, or to do something which will be to the detriment of shareholders or borrowers. Capital adequacy. I think that it is important to tackle that. We all admit that the capital is adequate and satisfactory and can allow banks to examine the dividends after many years. Are there risks? Of course. We have already underlined that postponed taxation, 60% of total, and the authorities need to tackle within the years to come. The last part has to do with competition and competitiveness. I will focus on competition. There is a long discussion about how accumulative the sector is, if there is space for other players, etc. Our point of view is that there is space available for smaller banks, for the creation of new bodies and new banks. But these new banks could reach a point that have a competitive business model, a size that will allow them to have the necessary characteristics for stability and resilience, and have a clear investment proposal for access to capital markets. We have seen different movements over the past months. I don't want to refer to specific banks, but with the proper approaches, meeting various criteria and requirements, we will be in a framework that will allow competition to flourish and create new conditions for something which will be to the benefit of the consumers and the wider business community. Thank you all for the opportunity you gave us, and I am at your disposal if you wish to have a further discussion on certain issues.
Αν μπορώ να έχω το μικρόφωνο, ευχαριστώ. Σχετικά με τις...
About digital banks that do exist over the past years, the question is why digital banks can't have profits until now. Is there a reason? It is a new effort, and all institutions, financial institutions, traditional or modern, do have a lot of problems to face and losses. None can be profitable from day one. In way of payments, Greek banks have a lot of competition from other institutions, the ones that are licensed in other countries of the EU. We have all examples, especially when you have children abroad. You know the cost of capital transfer compared to the European ones. And we have local players to expand in the specific part to highlight a competitive edge that they have, and to be able to approach consumers that hear about banks and feel the model of banks obsolete. It is a trend that will be reinforced in the future, not at the level of payments, but wider banking services. I don't want to give examples of abroad, but some of them of Apple is characteristic. And I don't think it will take time until we see similar examples in our country. And another question: after withdrawal of HSBC, no foreign banks are in Greece. Why is this happening? We are the only country in Europe that doesn't have a foreign bank operating in it. quite interesting. I need to underline the obvious, that the European Union compared to the United States, during the crisis, either we talk about Greece or Ireland, a lot of European banks lost money. So people don't want to invest right now. It's not easy. Additionally, a lot of people understand first the size of the local market, and second, how one can approach this market with alternative networks of offering services. We need to revise that in the years to come, but in the near future, I wouldn't see a foreign bank coming to Greece. Thank you very much.
Το επόμενο πάνελ.
Now, next panel. Occupational insurance. This is an important pillar for the Greek enterprises and for those that we represent. So I am very happy to
θα συντονίσει το πάνελ, το οποίο αποτελείται από τον κύριο Κωνσταντίνο Λάζαρη, πρόεδρο.
I am very glad to welcome Mrs. Artemis Panagiotopoulou as Chief Executive Officer of EDECT as a moderator, Mr. Kostas Lazaris, Chairman of the Association of Occupational Insurance of Greece, Mr. Christos Nounis, Chairman of the Hellenic Union of Institutions for Occupational Retirement Provision, Mr. Eleni Koritsa, Vice Chairman of the BOD, and Mr. Themistoklis Hadzaridis, Managing Director of the Hellenic Pension Mutual Fund Management Company. Thank you very much for this introduction. I would like to thank the association so that I could be the moderator of this very interesting panel regarding occupational insurance. We have 4 distinguished speakers. We are a small market and we know each other, and actually we are very fond of each other. And that's why we can discuss all issues. We have here representation of 2 pillars of insurance, both first and second, occupational insurance and public insurance. And we're going to focus on the challenges faced by the insurance funds in a challenging entrepreneurial environment. In the last couple of years, we saw a long period of historically low performances or negative performances in state bonds and low inflation. We are now in a period of persistent high inflation and a change in monetary policies. And we have some other issues in the area as well. So welcome. The first 2 panels for today posed some important and interesting issues regarding the Greek economy. And we heard the young people speaking about ASG. So, Mr. Lazaris, let me start with you. The funds are now mature. You have good expression of your strategy. You have experience also. I would like to ask the following. We saw the correlation of in between shares and bonds in 2022 increasing. Inflation rose abruptly, double-digit figures. Interest rates also changed. So this showed that many things are changing. How do you manage these short-term impacts as an institutional investor? Thank you for your question. Let me start by thanking the organizers for this invitation. We have now been working for 10 years as a private law legal entities, and we have been very successful. Throughout all these years, we saw the strong and the weak points in our portfolios and in our operations. We are very much happy with our operators. In 2022, we had a very difficult year for investors because we had a lot of difficulties and we had many challenges geopolitically wise, energy wise. We are not experts, so we hear the experts. We knew that when bonds rise, the shares fall, and vice versa. But we saw in such a period as in 2022, this is not true. So in cooperation with our financial consultants, we redefined our ceilings. We gave our people the opportunity for alternative investments. And with our support, our investors were rather cool. The damage was not so bad, and they focused on active management of their portfolio, trying to utilize all opportunities and limit all losses. Of course, we have long-term horizons in our investments. All our members are of this profile, and this is a very important advantage. So we do not need to be afraid of any turbulences in the market. On the other hand, we have the opportunity to invest however the market is. Of course, we understand that at some point these turbulences are going to be to the past. Things are going to be normalized again. We'll start speaking about alternative investments, about risk management, etc. In order to manage these funds, we try to find several solutions. For example, we have meetings of the committees and the boards, and we try to see how we can invest based on ESG criteria. Already last Monday, October 2nd, we have a very important meeting with the Pensions Europe office, and we'll see how they deal with this situation so that we can understand what types of changes we need in Greece. Moreover, I have to focus on two things that make our life really difficult. One is that due to the law, we are obliged not to exceed 5% of our capital, of our equity, for alternative investments. However, we are a long-term investor. And the second thing is that at this moment, we are focusing mainly on the recapitalization. So our members are rather limited in their investment openings. Thank you. I am going to come back to alternative investments in the discussion later, and I'm going to give the floor right away to Mrs. Koritsa. As chairman of the BOD of the Eurobank Asset Management MFMC, and also chairman of the BOD of the Occupational Fund of the Hellenic Asset and Fund Management Association. We know that this is the occupational funds are new, small in size, and they started in difficult times. So what about your investment strategy and the achievement of attractive investments? As regards the restrictive monetary policy, we were unlucky in that we delayed in finding a treasurer, signing the contract with the operator, etc. But on the other hand, exactly due to this delay, we were lucky because we reached the end of 2022. So when we started investments, we invested at other levels of performances and expectations, and also stock markets, market prices. So actually, the timing was not an issue, neither for the investment committee nor for our managers. We were overall rather lucky. Now, looking to the future, and despite the restrictive policy, let me say that in the US yesterday, they decided on a temporary pause. In the European Central Bank, they say more and more that they have reached a peak. So for all new contributions, the bond percentage is going to bring more yield. And we might have actual yields as well. Now, speaking about the Greek shares, we can think again about providing a better percentage for Greek products. And I believe that the companies will start be more open to this opportunity. And they have started showing their confidence to Greek products more and more now. I believe that we started in a good time. All investments are better and better every time. As Mr. Lazaris said, the long term is the main bet, not the short term. So every optional insurance fund needs to know which is the long horizon, the long-term point for the first deliveries. Exactly because this is an optional fund, and despite the fact that this is the fund of the people who work in managing companies, this community is rather dispersed, because we're speaking about the community of managing real estate, shares, titles, etc. Their retirement monies, their retirement funding, investing rather, is not a mentality that has yet matured. But so we have to focus on this because we have to make it, to instill it in the minds of the people. That's really very important. And we heard the young people that the mentality has not yet changed, but it seems that it's going to change soon. And I believe that we can all agree that, especially the occupational funds, will help young people understand that if we have a well-established, well-structured environment, we can enhance the income of people. And let me further add something. The president of the capital market spoke about the new regulations that are going to be game changers in our market. One of the major pillars in risk is how to promote financial literacy. That's very, very important. Mr. Nunes, you have the floor. We know very well that you support fervently the occupational funds, occupational insurance, which is not obligatory, of course. It is optional insurance. We have TECA, we have EFEAT. Some of these funds are not brand new, so they have some years of experience behind them. But nevertheless, it is difficult to say that we are designing an investment strategy after certain years. So we know that the optional TIAC have as their aim to add up to the obligatory insurance funding, always considering the inflation rates. We hear that the interest rates are going to remain high for long. So do you think that the TIAs need to be restructured? Thank you for the question. I would like to thank the forum for the organization of this conference and for inviting me to be part of this interesting panel. Indeed, our optional occupational insurance funds aim at long-term investment. Commitment is an important issue here because they have to be committed to the fund for 15, 20 years, and then they should keep their money with the fund for long periods. The challenge of inflation is a major one. And as we understand, the investment strategy of our committees has changed. As I understand, we want to find a hedging mechanism. We also want to utilize bond funds, mutual funds, in order to hedge inflation. And as Mr. Lazari said, we want to see how to boost alternative investments. So we'll see how we can be more current in our provisions. Let me also speak about this long-term character of these funds. Historically, it is shown that in the long term, in the long run, all investments provide yield. So our interest is in horizons longer than 15 years. So this way, we'll see how we can keep the level, the quality level. Mr. Hatzaridis, I believe that we have seen very interesting issues regarding the percentage of alternative investments. We represent the first pillar of insurance. And as we know, the investment behavior for the first pillar is, and the second pillar is very restrictive. Over 87% have to play with Greek bonds and bank money. We are hearing about the structural restructuring of these funds, but based on the course that we've seen in the state bonds, we are now dealing with the upgrade of the country in the rating of the investment grade. So my question is, how can we differentiate the entrepreneurial risk for the first pillar? As you said, this is rather restrictive based on the international standards of investment risk. Even as regards the spectrum of investments that we can tackle. As regards occupational funds, we are at the level of 10, which is rather an old figure. The upgrade of our country in terms of investments means the end, signals the end of a multi-year crisis. And Greece, after 2024, will be considered a developed country. After that, I can say that the adjustment to the international standards is what is expected after this course. The adjustment to international practices of investment management is important, and of course broadening the investment categories, because this helps the yields to be better, always based on the risk taken. Now, as the first pillar, we do need some legislation, some regulation, so that the flexibility is regulated, is restricted, based on the examples of the second pillar. And also, we want to invest in some categories that we haven't invested in the past. For example, alternative investments, either in the form of equity or convertibles, or participations based on private infrastructure. So this discussion is important because the long-term investments of the insurance bodies have offered a very good performances, very good yields. We can take the example of Northern European countries. We have this 87%. If we could overturn this compass And we had best practice investments in alternative channels. And if we had the ideal regulatory framework accepting these kind of investments, if we had this environment, then we would have completely different performances. If we had a different situation, then we believe that we would have an increase by 100% maybe. So the funds at this moment have approximately 15 billions. So after 20 years, practically we haven't seen any performance. So we expect that we'll have a better situation in the future. And I need to say that this example of the simulation that you said is very similar to the diagram that we saw before. As for how this experience would be if things were different. And of course, there is another experience of different types of investments. Mr. Lazaris, you mentioned private equity last year in the third conference that we had. We know very well that the funds have already entered private equity as long-term investors. And we know that we have seen some other alternative investments, as for example, infrastructures are being used as hedges against inflation in other countries. So which is your experience? And I would like to ask whether these alternatives investments has contributed to the risk profile in your strategy. As I said before, we are trying to find ways to create alternative investments. At this moment, we are reaching 1.7 billion, which is a good figure for the Greek market. Equity funds, until now, give us the opportunity to differentiate risk and increase our yields. We offer to the society by investing in innovative businesses that could not draw monies from the stock market or the banking system. At the same time, we have social responsibility because we invest in startups which will develop new solutions for the society in some years to come, and we will be able to progress in society. Moreover, we have a further benefit of the social dimensions because we have quality indicators as well. We can have investments very resilient to everyday volatility. Experience up to now has been very positive. Another alternative investment would be real estate. Real estate is a very common form of alternative investments that can take the form of buying real estate or investing in a real estate investment manager. But nevertheless, these funds do not have the variability of traditional funds, but this is also an advantage because the real estate differentiates the portfolio. Of course, they have a difficulty in liquidation. However, this is not an actual risk because we are long-term investors, but they have some particularities as regards their taxation and their daily management. As regards the case of other positionings, we can wonder why the Canadian funds can buy shares in the Greek airport, but not the Greek funds. Or the funds cannot invest in cooperatives of agricultural ventures or other ventures which are beneficial, which would be beneficial for the society. There are many examples showing that we can be very innovative in our investment with a social sign in our commitment. In terms of credits, I can say that the funds are not banks. They don't want to be banks, but they could use their equity in order to help society by contributing to cooperative financial associations, institutions. This way, they could contribute to the creation of new infrastructure, for example, harbors, airports, etc., or even private projects like, for example, the expansion of motorways. So in this case, we can have differentiation within the portfolio with different participations in different types of projects, with different horizons of payback and different types of risk indicators. So this variability in the portfolio would differentiate the internal risk in the portfolio because there is no interrelation in between these differentiated investments, and there is no relation with the shares whatsoever. So this is a golden opportunity, a gold opportunity to develop the actual economy and to help the national economy as well. It is necessary, though, to increase a different culture, a culture of cooperation. We have to understand what is at stake and create new structures. The only restriction is that we should be steady in our vision and